Management Solution and Integration Network R&D Bharti Airtel, ICT professional with more than 22 years of wide-ranging experience of telecom industry with various perspective of technology both from strategic as well as execution level. His key expertise includes network transformation, network design and planning, network architecture, network evolution, NFV, SDN, 5G, LTE, managed services, standards, WAS signaling, RFP planning and evaluations, CAPEX and investment management and solution management. Let's invite on stage Mr. Saurabh Mittal. Our next panelist for this session, Sivakumar Selva Ganapathy, VP Johnson Controls. Shiva is CXO-level digital executive with a collaborative mindset and business outcome-driven experience in managing high-performing virtual teams globally, successfully delivering solutions, leveraging contemporary technologies, platforms resulting in growth and productivity. He is responsible for the engineering and innovation centers across 5 campuses in India to drive growth through leadership, innovation, and deep understanding of customer needs, collaborating with the company's global business leaders. A big round of applause for Shiva, please. And our third panelist for this session is, you've heard him before, Samir Vuyuru, Head of WW Business Development for Communication Service Providers, Amazon Web Services. And the session will be moderated by Anil Chopra, VP Research and Consulting, Cyber Media Research. Anil, can I invite you on stage, please? Welcome everybody, and over to you, Anil.
Thank you. Am I audible at the back? Am I audible? Oh, I think we're just, between them and lunch, so that's why I'm not able to hear anybody. But just to respond to Shubhendu's comment, no, Shubhendu, I'm not cursing you. In fact, you've kind of set the context for our discussion by actually talking about all the wonderful use cases of 5G, its economic impact and all those things. It's amazing to kind of hear all that out. And, if I were to look at some of the market data, it really goes along with whatever was being said in terms of the predictions and the growth in the entire market. And so we're not going to discuss use cases, so that job is made easier. But I think it's important to really understand the key technologies that are going to be enabling 5G rollouts, that are going to be enhancing 5G rollouts, which is basically cloud and edge computing. And if I were to look at some of the numbers to real quickly talk about that, I think there's a massive amount of growth expected in all 3 areas. 5G, I think 40% of subscribers is predicted in the next 5 years are going to be on 5G. That's the kind of growth we're talking about. Cloud, has, I think, already seen about 30% growth over the past year itself. And if I were to look at edge, around 40% growth expected in this area in the next 5 to 7 years. That is the kind of growth we are seeing over here. So it's important, I think, to really talk about the role of all these technologies in enabling 5G rollout. So let's start with you, Samir. On if I were to look at, I think 5G standard has been written to be cloud native, right? Now, but what's the best way to use the cloud? When we talk about using 5G, is it hybrid? Is it private? Or is it using one of the hyperscalers like Amazon? What is your suggestion?
Wow, that's quite a wide question, Anil. So I think you got to look at it in terms of, we've all talked about the return on capital here, right? There's 2 ways to inflect return on capital. One is grow the top line, which is what I talked about earlier today. But equally important, reduce the amount of capital expenditure, right? So pick the best combination of technologies that enable you to do both. Call me biased, but I think the public cloud allows you to inflect both sides. We've talked about how much money and where our telco partners are making with us in my session earlier. But on the flip side, taken to an extreme again, there is no capital expenditure if you build your network on AWS, right? It is a pay-as-you-go model where you align the revenue streams with your costs, which is ideally what you want to do, and not overbuild, take advantage of the elasticity, take advantage of the geographic reach. If the infrastructure is already there, why not use it?
Absolutely, I think very valid point. Pay-per-use infrastructure is already there, so why not just use that? So absolutely good point. Thank you, Samir. Shiva, would you like to add on to that? And of course, Johnson Controls has been into a lot of automation and building automation and all that. So obviously, edge becomes really important for you. How is it really now becoming a viable choice now when we look at the edge? And now, is it going to really enable 5G scaling as the need arises? And are we really seeing kind of edge computing in 5G as the next level of digital transformation?
Hello, can you hear me? Thank you, Voice and Data, for giving me this opportunity. A wonderful question. I think we are going to look at how 5G can really accelerate in terms of edge and cloud-based offerings to our customers. If we start from the customer-centric perspective, let's say within here, a quick role play. Let's say we have Saurabh as an enterprise customer, and we wanted to develop cloud-native apps leveraging AWS, and definitely we wanted to integrate a rating engine from Daniel's organization, and then we from Open Blue platform as part of Johnson Control, let's say, want to give an asset monitoring app or a sustainability monitoring app or a connected security app. In order to do that, I think the fleet and the diversity of devices and assets we have from an enterprise context is pretty huge. It's local to a particular country and then to a region and across the globe as well. So here we are looking at both cloud and the edge. And definitely, as previous panelists and the speakers spoke, I think 5G is going to be a key accelerator for this kind of IT and OT integration. And particularly the scale, and also from a cloud native perspective, it's going to be very, very important to provide a tailored bundle based offering to our customers, because particularly in the Indian context, the customers are very diverse from a commercial standpoint. We have large, ambitious enterprise customers who can afford, and then we also have set of all customers who are very price sensitive. So that is where I think both cloud native and edge are going to play a key role in terms of handling this monsoon of data to provide rich experience to the end customers. That could be businesses, enterprises, and consumers across the verticals.
So you definitely feel that 5G and edge are truly going to lead to the next level of digital transformation.
Definitely.
Okay. Saurabh, just if you'd like to add on to what Shiva said about 5G and edge, but I think more importantly, if we look at 5G, and that the discussion happened earlier also, it's what should I say, massive and ultra reliable machine type communication is what 5G really offers, right? So and then we've got cloud, working along with that. So do you really see this as, a game changer in terms of delivering 5G services and, establishing some of the real good use cases, some of the ones that we heard in the last discussion?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Anil. And first of all, thanks to Cyber Media and Voice and Data for giving me the opportunity. I sat through the morning sessions, and so let me actually give a little bit of acronym to define 5G as I see, right? And India is a cricket crazy world, and 5G is associated with speed. So I am actually going to give an acronym which is speed plus, and which is a synonym of speed, that's pace, PACE, right? So let's look at, how the 5G through the pace is going to be a game changer. The P over here stands for programmability. I think Shyam talked about it. The 5G inherently makes the network programmable to the needs of the application, to the needs of the user, to the needs of the enterprise. So I think, that's the very fundamental part of it. We have seen the technologies like network slicing, right? We have seen, there are components in the network which is RIC and things like that, which essentially make the network more programmable. So that's the first P. Second comes the A. A over here stands for automate or automation. I think again, for example, whether you take AI ML, whether you take again the way the network analytics actually get made available. And if you look at the self-organizing networks, this is something which was talked about a lot in the 4G space as well. But inherently, 5G, the way the fundamental technologies build up in the 5G, this is far more automative and self-learning, which is lending itself to the AI ML part of it. I mean, as Shiva said in his role play, right? I mean, this is one of the fundamental beauties of 5G, that you can essentially use it the manner you want it. The C over here is the capability of the 5G, right? I mean, we've talked about whether it is machine type, massive machine communications, whether, there is URLLC type of use cases, or the EMBB itself, right? If you look at, these are the fundamental different capabilities which have been added by 5G. Sometimes, I think, these are a little bit underscored if you compare to the different access methods, right? I mean, for example, again, coming to a manufacturing facility, right, or a warehousing, which very, very large warehouses, which have multiple sensors. If the technology used was Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, this is something we have been talking about. 5G essentially gives a much more predictable environment. So these are the inherent capabilities in the 5G, which actually makes it stand out as an access technology, to be used for a plethora of use cases. The last is E, right? Which is the exposure capabilities in the 5G. Sometimes it is a little bit not so much talked about. Now there are standardized APIs which are getting exposed through the functions called NEF, which 3GPP have kind of defined, which makes it all possible to be used and consumed by the applications, by the use cases, right? This is something which was kind of just put up by 3GPP or the standardization bodies in 4G, and people tried to build a lot of, gateways, API gateways, but these were not standards, right? These were not standard-based, and hence they were not fully exploited. Now, the last E essentially makes this, I would say, 5G as an innovation platform for all the different kind of use cases, right? So this is, I would say, that how the 5G is really enabling with this pace, and pace is speed plus. So this is not just speed. I think this is the pace of 5G which makes it differentiator and a game changer. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Saurabh. I think wonderfully explained the PACE framework and how 5G is going to really enable this entire next generation of transformation, I would say. Speed plus and, so many different applications. Just to extend that further, Samir, I'll come back to you on, what you said about there's an infrastructure, use it, right? And I think you've been kind of handling the telco business in the US, right? If I were to look at using the public cloud for, telcos, how do you really look at, the data security and regulatory requirements of some of the telecom workloads?
Yeah, so fundamentally, security is job number one for us at AWS, right? And you'll hear that over and over again. So all data is encrypted all the time, at rest, in transit, right? And we use quantum key encryption and all of that. We've been selected by national security agencies, by financial exchanges, and so on, healthcare, real-time applications. So it's something that we deeply understand. But I want to pivot to the edge, right, for a minute in this. So we tend to associate edge with low latency. But our view is that the edge serves three laws. One is the law of the land. When you need the data to be within a certain geography or in a certain enterprise, that's when you bring the AWS cloud into that environment, whether it's a county, whether it's a state, whether it's a single enterprise. So that's the law of the land, right? The second biggest driver is the law of economics, because it is going to be impossible to transport all of the data generated to a central processing facility or a central cloud location for it to be acted upon intelligently. So the ability to intelligently distribute processing, storage, algorithmic execution for AI/ML, where the data resides, takes your costs down 80 to 90%, as we've seen in a computer vision use case. Otherwise, you're paying for petabytes of transport to a central cloud. And then comes the law of physics, which is latency, right? And what you'll find is that in a lot of places where we have infrastructure, just do a ping to the AWS cloud. You will see 20 to 30 to 40 milliseconds today without an additional edge. And where we need that additional law of physics constraint, we have multiple engagements with telcos, such as yourselves here, where we have partnered with a service called Wavelength, with Verizon, with KDDI, with Vodafone, and so on. We have Outpost, which is a private MEC. Right? We have IoT Core, which sits on the devices themselves and provides decisioning there. So the edge is really wherever the data is. And that's the mental model you should be looking at through those three laws.
Okay. I've asked one question to each panelist, so I'm just going to pause there and see if the audience has any questions on any of the things that have been said. Just to test if they've been listening.
Yeah, we are standing before the lunch.
Yeah, what are the three laws?
So any questions from any of your audience?
I'll ask a question.
Please.
5G has spawned a number of MVNOs in the United States. Do you think there is an opportunity for that to happen? If so, why? And if not, why?
I can take it because we've deployed quite a few MVNOs running natively on AWS today. So I've been privy to why they have done it. And the reason actually has nothing to do with 5G. It is about the industry expertise that they bring, right? If you make 5G a simple bolt-on and trivialize the deployment of it, the economic structure is that connectivity is only 10% of the total consumption of an enterprise. The people who are serving the other 90% are the industry-specific SIs, the industry-specific IP owners like Johnson, right? And for them, it's a simple add-on at this point. 5G is cloud native, which means you can click a button and turn it on. And so you're going to start seeing competition in that private network space from people who are deeply embedded and know the industry. And that's why these enterprise-specific mobile virtual network operators are easy to deploy now. I don't see why not. But I think it also presents an opportunity for the established telcos to really create those specific industry vertical spinouts quickly. If you look at the S-curve, just create a bunch of startups. You need 2 people, 3 people who are really familiar with the industry and the tools that are available out there. Go launch an MVNO. I can launch an MVNO spectrum willing in 2 or 3 days today on AWS.
And also it depends upon, in India market, particularly which vertical we are targeting. And definitely we'll have to pick and choose which vertical, where MVNO is really required and then deploy instead of one size fits all. So really depend upon what market segment we are looking at and really deploying it. But I agree with Samir, we should be able to experiment it and then take it forward.
Yeah, I mean, no, being from the service provider is a very tricky question to answer for me. I think the only thing I will add to what just Samir said is that, you know, at the telco side, we are investing a lot on the industry verticals, right? I mean, whether this is a MVNO or whether this is within the larger telco umbrella, I think that's immaterial. What is important is what Samir said is that it's important to experiment. I think there are, I mean, if you look at from what earlier was said by Sham, Kilan Saab, at the end, the service experience has to be predictable for these use cases to succeed. And everybody brings their own expertise. I think telcos bring the expertise of running the network and ensuring the KPI SLAs which are required for these industry verticals to succeed. Because look, if it is just connectivity, there are technologies like, I mean, whether it is LoRa, whether it is Wi-Fi 6 or 7, which exists, right? I mean, it's not that, I mean, they don't exist and, I mean, wing of the enterprises don't know to operate it. Where 5G becomes more different is the predictability, ensuring the KPI SLAs, which are needed to make these new use cases succeed. And this is where the telcos are great at. So my sense is that, I mean, and this is something all the telcos, Kapil was here earlier, they have been investing a lot, working with the right set of partners. I mean, to say that, okay, telcos know everything, no. We are working with SIs, we are working with, I mean, many partners in this room, over stage, to see how do we actually build these capabilities in India. There are multiple models. I mean, some models have succeeded in the Western countries. I'm sure that there are new models which can emerge at other locations, and the telcos are very well positioned to take this forward with the enterprises and ensuring that, I mean, what is needed gets done to make this happen. Thank you.
Great. Shiva, just coming back on, you talked about how 5G and edge can be, the next level of digital transformation, but you didn't bring in cloud. So if I were to look at cloud, edge, and 5G, do you really see that as game-changing for some of the things that you do? I mean, you've been doing a lot of IoT, you're in the IoT space, but what about bringing in the cloud?
Yeah. So definitely, I think there are two patterns emerging, right? So one is how do we cloudify, and at the same time, how do we edgeify? It's going to be a mix. It's not going to be one versus the other. I think a few years ago, there used to be a term called, lift and shift, from on-prem to cloud, or you cloudify, right? So I think those days are gone. That will still happen, but that's not the real transformation to the extent what the market and our customers, our consumers are really looking at. Then we'll say, okay, let's refactor the architecture and then say, we'll make sure that it is cloud enabled. I think now with the volume of data we are talking about, we are at a point in time where we have to really look at how do we start a greenfield and by design make sure it is cloud native and leverage concepts like containerization so that we give our end customers an a la carte menu so that they can pick and choose what they need. Because remember, we were also talking about return on investment and how do we grow both the top line and the bottom line. It's very important to cater to the customer needs. And if you're going to give a grand buffet when my appetite is really low, I mean, nobody's going to take it. So it's very important to really look at that cloud native approach, leveraging microservices architecture and also monetize those through APIs and of course being very secure about it. And particularly on the edge side of it, where we are looking at edge cloud, particularly in the telco sector, really looking at how the concepts of MEG, etc., to really have closer to the device. How do we do advanced analytics for the telco operators themselves to really look at monitor and using advanced analytics concept to self-heal and make those cognitive impact to maintain well and run, and also provided value-added services to the end consumers. So that's how I see how cloud and edge are going to interplay with each other and really look at whatever is needed at the edge, having security, reliability, low latency, and advanced analytics, take it to the edge. And at the same time, whatever we need, let's say real-time, less payload, less transport cost, etc., then you move it to the cloud and then interplay with it. So that co-mingling is going to stay, and that's the pattern we are looking at.
So if I could add on to that for a minute. The mental model of the edge has got to change, right? The edge is wherever the data is. So speaking for AWS, if you're in Metro Bombay, all of Metro Bombay is the edge, right? Because we have a region there. Whereas if you're accessing it out of Thiruvananthapuram or something, right, you will need an edge cloud deployed there to get the same benefits, right? So in our view, there is no discrete edge, there is no discrete cloud. The cloud extends and stretches to wherever the data is, including on the smallest chipsets available that run sensors, right? That is also the edge, that is also the cloud. There is no difference.
Thank you. As we have about 7 minutes left and we are holding them for lunch, I'm going to ask one last question to all of you. The importance of partnerships between cloud, edge, and 5G and the telcos. I think that there's a lot of partnerships that we're seeing happening, between telcos and the other providers, the hyperscalers and all that. So I think it's important to talk about the advantages of doing that and how it's really going to scale up 5G deployment moving forward. So we will start with you, Samir, and then we can.
Sure. I'm going to use real life examples, right? In 2021, we announced that Dish Networks in the United States was building a cloud-native network on AWS. In 15 months, without any infrastructure investment, it is serving roughly 100 million population today. Right? It absolutely is. And it could not have happened without all of the ecosystem players, the BSS players like Amdocs, like Telco DR, the core and RAN manufacturers, the Samsungs, the NECs, Nokias, so on, all of them committing to become cloud native, to build that. So there's literally more than 50 partners that ran on AWS to enable that network to be built at that speed, right? And the key is the uniform development environment. Everyone's operating on the same environment. One of them doesn't have their own private stack, another one doesn't have their own private stack, they're all operating on the same. And the tools that you see out there, it's the tools that the IT guys use, right? The AWS console is the orchestration engine, right? So speed, very low cost of capital, right? And many, many use cases that they've deployed to B2B.
We are in a world of interconnected relationship or 360-degree relationship, if you will. So it's very important that partnerships, customer relationship, and suppliers, etc. We wear different hats depending upon the context in which we are in. And particularly with telcos and hyperscalers and 5Gs, etc., we also have another set of stakeholders to cater to. And when we talk about transformation, it's our collective responsibility to really make sure that we responsibly transform. So we are also looking at other kind of partnerships to really look at how do we make sure this kind of, not specific to 5G, any kind of technology transformation, we are looking at, we are environment friendly, we are eco-friendly, we are also sourcing material that is sustainable or whatnot. So partnerships is very critical for any transformation, and particularly for this 5G in telco, where there are different point of views. If you Google it, we'll get it, okay. With all these micro cells and antennas, etc., there is an impact of bird migration pattern and some of the colonial bees and their fertility or whatnot. So it's very important that partnership is key, and both outside in and inside out. And also another critical aspect is digital literacy, right? So we are talking about in Indian context of urban and semi-urban and rural. So what kind of partnership we need to really leverage this partnership to improve the literacy and the kind of offerings we give, how they adopt it and adapt it as well. So partnership is very, very key, and it's very complex and it's intermingled.
Saurabh?
Yeah, I don't want to stand between everybody here and the lunch. Let me keep it very short. I think from a telco perspective, I mean, telcos have been used to working with a model called single neck to choke, right? I mean, you have a partner and you work with them on certain KPI, SLA. This has been the strength of most of the telcos. But the world is definitely changing. And I'm happy to share that we are partners to many of the people present in the room. I think we understand, I mean, telcos understand that this is now an ecosystem which has to be, I mean, supported between each other. There's this term of frenemies, I mean, which is friends and enemies, but we have to work together to solve the customer issues at the end of the day. That's something which is important. The second important part is, and I think this is something again a little bit overlooked, for a great experience to the consumer, to the enterprise, there are various domains which are essentially have to come together. There is I mean, if you look at just from a network perspective, right, and especially with the cloudification and the virtualization, many things come together there is a core network. Then you have a radio network, and then you have the devices. Now, I mean, and of course, all the automation and the orchestration which goes along with it. If you look at the people who are, I mean, having expertise in these domains, right? I mean, the person having expertise in devices probably doesn't understand ABC of the core networks or the automation. The person understanding the radio network, he doesn't probably, or he or she doesn't, give a damn to what happens on the automation. These are new words for them, right? I think so. The partnership is a model to actually overcome, these kind of challenges, right? I mean, if you look at, these are not intersecting circles. This is, I think I've said this previously somewhere, that this has to be a union of these circles. So partnership is a model which actually has to be there for us to, at the end, deliver to the business outcomes, right? I think, so, and all the telcos, I must say that, and especially from an Airtel perspective, we have been working with, whether it is, hyperscalers, whether it is private clouds, whether it is, infrastructure providers, on the compute side, storage side, down to the chipset levels. When it comes to the SI, parts, so there are this bunch of, ecosystem players that we work with to deliver on most of these use cases. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So with that, we kind of come to the end of the panel, and I think I've stuck to my time. And I appreciate the panelists for kind of also working with me and helping me out and being, on time. But some really interesting points have actually really emerged from our discussion. The PACE framework, and Samir, you talked about law of the land, economics, physics, in terms of, providing the right, infrastructure for telcos. Shiva, importance of partnerships and how 5G and is going to be the, game changer for digital transformation and acceleration. So thank you for that. Thank you so much to all of you. Thanks for listening in patiently. I think we'll not stand any further, anymore between them and lunch. So I'll end the panel now. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Anil, but I would just request you to stay on stage for just 30 seconds so that we can felicitate our panelists who have come here and given us such insights. Can we have the mementos, please? Also requesting the audience to fill the feedback form. You can either keep them on your desk, we can get it collected, or you can give it at the registration counter outside. Your feedback is very important for us to better ourselves and deliver quality to you every time you come for a conference. So please don't forget to fill your feedback form. Ladies and gentlemen, after the memento ceremony, we will be breaking for lunch. I would request you to please assemble back at 2:30 in the hall. 2:30 we will start our next session, so it would be nice if everybody can be 5 minutes before time and be seated on their seats. It would help us to start the proceedings on time.